everybody, Armored Pants here, and I have another video for you. And this is the last in the new American heavy line. It's the Tier 10, the M-VI-Yoh. Yo. Now we've finally come on this journey from Tier 7 up to Tier 10. Can't say it's been fun. We said before that these things kind of look a bit like the battle droids from Star Wars. Roger. Certainly Tier 9 did, and this one at Tier 10 is no different. In fact, you may even say it looks more like the battle droid than the previous one. And I guess that's keeping with the Star Wars theme of this, in that the nomenclature, the naming of these tanks makes no fucking sense whatsoever, because it's like 7, then 3, then 5, then 6. So it's like the Star Wars movies themselves, you know, and you know why that is, because in charge of scheduling I was. So here you go. As you can see, it's droid head there sticking out looking at you.
Roger.
Now, these tanks are all from tiers 8 up are autoloaders. This is no exception. This is also an autoloader. We're going to have a look at that. We're going to have a look at the setup in the tech spec. We are going to have a look at some gameplay. We're going to look at 2 games, actually, both masteries. I said this when I was looking at the tier 7, right? One of the characteristics of this tank line is that there's very cheap masteries available. I'm not sure why. But both of the games we're going to look at are masteries, yet both I think have less than 1400 XP, whereas typically you need 1500 to 1600 XP to master a tank. Well, certainly on the EU server, I know it's a bit less on other servers, because obviously your mastery badges are compared to other people's XP, so it's server dependent. Never played in a Russian server, so I don't know what it is there, but on other servers I know it's a bit less. Not much less, but a little bit less. But nonetheless, you know, I think the first master game in this is 1374 XP, 1374 XP, which is pretty low for a tier 10 mastery, I have to say. Normally, I mean, sometimes I've had to get like 1600 plus XP to get a mastery game. I think once even 1700. So we'll have a look at those. Anyway, let's have a look at the tech spec. So in terms of provisions, I would use case of coke and improved fuel. That's going to max out your performance in the tank. And because it's an autoloader, I would run calibrated shells, and then also run supercharged and refined gun. You know, the difference between using calibrated shells when you've got an autoloader and using a gun rammer is, as Dr. Evil says, inconsequential. So, I mean, the reload is 19.5 with gun rammer, and it's only 19.9 with seconds with calibrated shells. So why not take the extra XP? Because if you're waiting 20 seconds for reload, that extra 0.4 of a second doesn't really make any difference. So take the extra pen, right? So in terms of the gun itself, the top gun is 120mm, which you kind of really need. The 105mm lacks a bit of pen at tier 10, so definitely use that. And your muzzle velocities are 1387 on your AP rounds, dropping to 1258 on your heat, and then dropping down to 1196 meters per second only on HE. And we're going to discuss that in a second when we look at the gun handling index. Your pen numbers are 265, 352 and 66 respectively with AP, heat and HE if you use calibrated shells, which I recommend you do. And that's going to give you 450, 380 and 515 of damage. So your burst damage is going to be 900 on your standard AP rounds, which after a 20-second reload is not great. We discussed this at tier 9, right? This is not great. This is not a great tank. And we discussed it during the gameplay. That's probably one of the reasons why the base XP for mastery is so low. In terms of its gun handling index, it's 13 with AP, but because of the drop in muzzle velocity, that drops to 11 with HE. So just be aware of that, guys, because if you're switching between shell types, as you move from AP through heat to HE, your gun handling index, so basically how good the gun system is, decreases. So be aware of that. So if a shot that you would have made with the AP may miss, or you may fluff with the HE, and that's because of the decrease in gun handling. As we look here at the armor profile, you will see that you can side scrape in this tank. If you look at the relative armor numbers here in the top left of the screen, you will see you can side scrape. It's a typical side scraping position for the tank. You can see here that the turret is really difficult to pen. The tank has 10 degrees of gun depression, right? So what does that tell us? Well, it basically tells us that this tank can go hull down. It also has this really fucking small head. I mean, it's a sniper's nightmare, right, as you say about people with small heads. And so it's very difficult to hit let alone pen if you're in a good hold down position. Now, the previous tanks in this line haven't been so good because you've like 7 and 8%, 8 degrees of gun depression with the lower tiers. But thankfully, here you now have a proper hold down tank. So therefore you can adopt tactics with this as you would with the T11OE5. Similar kind of tactics can be adopted. Now, in terms of getting into those positions, because you're not going to run, you don't have the option to run adrenaline, I would run the engine accelerator, see if you can get into hold down positions earlier. Because the mobility in this tank, mobility index is only 2.7, right? Now previous iterations of this tank at lower tiers, it's been 3.5 and above 3, and above 3 we say for heavy is good, below 3 is not so good. This only is 2.7. You've lost mobility as you move through the tiers as well, so just be aware of that. A significant difference of almost 1 in terms of the so like 3.5 to 2.7 in terms of the mobility index between the tier 7 and the tier 10, so you lost quite a bit of mobility, right? So that so playing this as a medium is far more difficult than it was playing the tier 7 as a medium. But if you use the engine accelerator, it bumps that mobility index up again, and therefore allows a bit more flexibility in your ability to play this as a medium, or if you're going hold down, to get into that hold down position early, which is very important, so that you can get in there, get into a good position, and then you're set for doing some decent damage in this tank. Now let's have a look at some gameplay. As I said, the turret in this tank is fucking tiny. It's just like a dude with a tiny head. Actually, kind of reminds me of a joke. This guy walks into a bar and he's got a really, really tiny head. And the barman says to him, listen mate, drinks are on me for the evening, if you don't mind me asking you a question. He says, no, sure. He says, it's probably going to be about my head, isn't it? He says, actually, it fucking is about your head, because it's like the fucking smallest head I've ever seen. And like, your body is normal, but your head is like fucking tiny. I mean, like, what happened to you? Are you born like that or whatever? He says, no, I had a normal head when I was born, just popped out the same as everybody else. He says, what happened? He said, I was on this island with all these, and it was totally populated just with women, right? I got shipwrecked there, and like the women had never seen a man before, so they just wanted to have sex with me all the time. So they're just like having sex constantly with me, and this may seem like a really good problem to have, but after a while, like, even though there's so many beautiful women and I was having sex so often, I kind of got a bit bored with it. So when you were the leader of the females, their queen had never had sex with me, and she said that she would grant me one wish if I had sex with her, But at this stage, I'd like been having sex with all these women non-stop for like a few years. So I said to her, sure, no problem. And I said, but I don't suppose a little head is out of the question, is it? And here I am. So, by the way, I should probably preface this video by saying probably shouldn't let kids listen to this. I don't let kids listen to my videos anyway, because they do use a lot of fucks and stuff like that. Also don't give it a lot of fucks. So where was I? Oh yeah, this tank. So you'll see here a few things about this tank, right? And we touched on this in the we didn't touch on, actually I went into it in fucking details in the previous video, right? This tank, like the tank before, is not a good tank insofar as its influence on the game. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, your ability to influence a game depends on a number of things, but one of the key things is how often you can fire a round, because firing rounds is basically what this game is about. This game is about lots of other things too, like spotting, and we've discussed the importance of spotting so many times, guys, right? So I'm not going to go into that again. But firing rounds, particularly in a heavy tank, is one of the key aspects of how you influence a game. And if you're only firing 2 rounds every 24-25 seconds, you're not really influencing the game that much. Plus, the rounds you're firing are not particularly effective, because you're doing 450 damage, but at tier 10 450 damage is average, right? I mean, there's loads of tanks that do much more damage than 450. So your burst damage is 900, so you can do maximum 900 damage unless you fire HE rounds. But if you fire heat, you're doing even less. You're doing only like plus just over like, what is it, 780 damage. So you see what I mean there about the low XP, right? Cheap mastery badge. So therefore, this tank I don't believe is that good, and this may be one of the reasons why the XP for a mastery is so low, because the tank is not good. So therefore, if you compare, how do we get mastery game? We get a mastery game by getting more XP than 99% of the other players who've played this tank in a certain period, which is normally a week. Although wargaming changes it sometimes around Christmas and stuff like that, and special events, but normally it's around a week, right? So that means that you have gotten the top 1% of XP on this tank. So therefore, there is no baseline for XP. The baseline is set by other players. So if you consider that, this is a tier 10 tank, so the best players, the most experienced players should be playing this. Now, we'll discuss the fact that that's not the case. I mean, when I was shooting these games, I've seen guys playing tier 10 with like 800 games. You're like, what the fuck, dude? What are you doing there? Like, please go and watch some videos, mine or somebody else's. You shouldn't be up there with fucking that many. You shouldn't be up in tier 10 until you have like 10,000 games. I don't think you should go up to tier 8 until you have minimum 5,000 games if you're a really good player. But probably 8,000, a good rough benchmark I think is 1,000 games per tier. Just as a rule of thumb. But we see so many players out there now. What the fuck is going on? But anyway, let's assume, ceteris paribus, all things being equal, you expect the best players with the best experience to be up there. So therefore, the XP should be higher. So why is it not compared to other tanks? Well, simply because the tank is not good. That's the only conclusion. I think that's a safe inference to draw from it. Now, if you've a different theory, very happy to hear it, guys. Please let me know in the comments section, or even drop me an email, or PM me on the Facebook page, Armored Pants. But to me, that seems to be the logical assumption. I mean, if you compare this to, let's say, the tier 10 equivalent, or let's say it's one of its closest competitors, which is in the same tech line, the T57 Heavy, right? T57 Heavy is faster than this. It has a better power to weight ratio. It's better. It has better mobility index, better gun handling, and it has 3 shells in the magazine and does way more, like almost 50% more damage per burst. And it has equivalent armor profile, maybe even slightly better, and the same gun handling. Better gun handling, and it has the same gun alignment. So therefore, it's just a better tank, right? Significantly better. The T11OE5, okay, not directly comparable, of course. But the T11OE5 again has an 8.5 second reload. Drops down to just 8 if you use adrenaline. It's much better mobility index, much better, has better gun handling, etc. And your DPM is much better, right? So again, that's why I think this tank behaves better, right? That tank behaves better than this one, right? So that's my theory. I don't think this tank line is particularly good, right? There was nothing inspiring about it. I like mastering tanks. That's kind of my thing now, because that's sort of how I set benchmarks and what I enjoy doing. But what the fuck is this, by the way? Look at this. What the fuck? I mean, that must have just hit the absolute apex of the 2 armor plates there. But anyway, I think so. It's not a good tank. I mean, doing the journey from 7 to 10 on this was literally like the journey to fucking the dentist. Not fun at all. Don't enjoy it. And when you get there, just some more pain. And even if it's not painful, just the anticipation of it. Plus, having somebody else's fingers in your mouth is not pleasant. Not at the dentist, certainly not a prison. So, that's just my 2 pence, 2 cents, whatever, worth on this tank. If you, of course, I understand you guys want to play them because they're new, and that's why I did the intro for you. The intro and the complete guides for you. I hope you found it useful. I hope you found it helpful. Thanks for watching. But if you have a choice I would recommend going up the line that takes you to T57 before this, or the line that takes you to the T11OE5 before this. That's if you want to do the American line. And then there's lots of other good, better heavy lines on this, like the German, Russian, etc. Anyway, cheers much. Thanks for watching. I hope you found it enjoyable. I hope you found it useful. Now I guess all remains for me to say is, as always, pants off.